well, I'm bringing something that could sound a bit grim. It's called an unhealthy mind. And I think the reason I brought this in is that we know a lot about what a healthy body is, and therefore an unhealthy body. We kind of know that intuitively. But it's really only very recently that people at a sort of collective level have really started to focus on, okay, something similar is likely to go on in the mind. There's such a thing as an unhealthy mind and a healthy mind. But what is the distinction? And, we hear talk about mental illness. Okay, but what does that really mean? And so I just wanted to sort of clear that up a bit and give my sense of what it is, because I think that one of the sort of stigmas around mental illness is people just don't know what it is if they've never suffered from it. Right. They just think it's maybe madness, in inverted commas, and all sorts of ghoulish thoughts come to mind. So here's my take on it, that I think that a mind that's not very well is quite similar to everybody else's mind, but just with some added emphases and exaggerations. So, for example, one of the things that happens when your mind's not in a healthy place is you can't slow it down. Mm-hmm. It's running very, very fast all the time. And what we don't notice about a healthy mind is that it's got a brake pedal and you can press it. And therefore, when a certain train of thought gets going and doesn't let up, you can actually, slow down its progress. This becomes really difficult in an unhealthy mind. And also, I think a healthy mind's got steps in it. So you think, okay, I'm on this step, and it will require 22 steps to get to the catastrophe that might be envisaged from whatever's happened. When you're in a difficult place, it's a straight line to the worst outcome for everything. So, if you've been diagnosed with, I don't know, something physical, you think it's the worst possible diagnosis. If there's gossip about you in the office, you think, okay, it's the end of the world, or whatever it is. So you're unable to do that very basic thing of saying, I'm on this step. There's an awful lot of steps between me and catastrophe. That's that term, catastrophizing. It means that an ordinary event quickly snowballs into something unmasterable. Also,
So I'm slightly confused as to, so an unhealthy mind is a brilliant thing.
No, an unhealthy mind is what if we're unlucky,
yes,
we may end up with. But it's not a brilliant thing because it's a source of deep distress.
Yeah, but that's what I mean. That's why I was kind of like confused.
I have no idea. Probably I got it wrong. Maybe we should be saying a healthy mind. Maybe we should be saying a healthy mind. But I suppose I'm bringing focus on this because we need to get a handle on what it is. What is the distinction between a healthy and unhealthy mind? So that we can appreciate the healthy mind and be more compassionate, more sensitive to our minds when they're unhealthy.
Yes.
As I say, we're relatively good at doing this with our bodies. We do, on a good day, listen to our bodies and kind of know what they need, know what's up with them. The mind is much darker slate, is it?
And are you interested in helping people access the healthy mind, or is that impossible for some people?
No, I think it's hugely possible.
Because we were talking before the show started about when you're doing therapy specifically, it's like getting out of the way.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, there's a view which I have a lot of sympathy for, that most of the time our minds can heal themselves, if that doesn't sound too mystical, so long as they're given the chance, so long as they're put, as it were, on the right train. And, often take a decision. Often people will agonize about decision. I don't know whether to, go here, go there, marry this person, marry that person, take this job, whatever. And sometimes someone says, the answer's already inside you. And that could sound a bit odd, spiritual. What does that mean, the answer's inside you? Well often, I think that is sort of true, that the bits of the answer are in your consciousness, but they're scattered like bits of a puzzle. And you need help to kind of align them, find the different bits, reconfigure them. So, this is why the modern world's got very interested in this ancient tradition of meditation and mindfulness, all these things that have come from the East, the idea of spending time. There's a lot of actual discussion about what is mindfulness meant to be. I think properly understood, it's actually a chance to study your own thoughts so that they become a little bit less unclear to you. Because one of the things that happens in the ordinary course of living is that we lose sight of what we're thinking, what we really mean, who we are, we're not obvious to ourselves. This is quite weird. I mean, if somebody says, what do you want to eat? Most of the time you think, oh, okay, maybe something kind of salty involving, whatever. The answer kind of comes to mind. Mm-hmm. But in other areas, what job do you want to do? Where do you really want to go? What's meaningful for you? We might hum and her for a very long time, because
it's very rare that you would spend that time with yourself, because that isn't something like, you could say, I fancy Thai food. That comes very quickly. Yeah. But what do you want to do is such a deep question. Like, you can't just summon a recipe.
Yeah, absolutely. And yet I want to propose that the answer is somewhere inside you, but very locked away, very buried. And so the discipline we know as psychotherapy is one way of understanding it is that it's a chance to give people some time outside of their normal life where their semi-conscious and unconscious thoughts can have a chance to bubble up, be dropped out of the mind in a slightly random order, and then the pieces can be explored, and then there might actually be an answer there already. So, there's a weird way in which we're cleverer than we ordinarily allow ourselves to be. We've got more answers than we ordinarily allow to emerge, and what we're lacking is the context, the tools, the setting in which these sort of higher, again, it's not mystical, but higher forms of intelligence are there. I mean, I'm a great fan of train rides. So what's a train ride? On a good day, the carriage is not too full, etc. Sometimes you get that sense that you're on a train, and by the time you get to your destination, not only have you reached, Manchester or Liverpool or wherever, but you've also reached some answers to bits of your life that were puzzling. And there's something about the rhythmical sound of the wheels against the rails, and maybe the sight of some, electricity pylons or whatever it is, and a large horizon, that gives the mind an opportunity to kind of unmoor itself from some of its more mundane, close-up concerns, and also quite frightened concerns. Because one of the big enemies of thinking is anxiety. We're too worried about what we might start to find if we start to think. And then that only makes the problem worse, because then the anxiety just gets more and more coiled up inside us, and it doesn't get a chance to get released. So some time when you're, as it were, both with yourself, but there's a little bit of distraction. I've tended to find that, that's why people love going on walks often, that there's enough of a chance to commune with yourself, but enough going on outside that when it gets tricky inside, you can just take a, glance at the view, and that just dampens some of the fear. And then after a while of this kind of more meditative activity, you might come to some big realizations. Maybe I'm living with the wrong person or the right person. Maybe I'm in the right job or the wrong job. Or maybe the direction I'm trying to get to is different from what, I wanted. So, not to be dramatic, we're strangers to ourselves often. We're not good at...
And also you could sort of put forward the suggestion that in the era that we live in now, we literally have many selves, because we have the projected self from kind of social media. So you have to kind of, not only do you have to deal with your actual self, but you've got this curated version of yourself that you're putting out to the world at a very young age. And you sort of wonder what, certainly the impact that must have had on young people.
I mean, there's always been a distinction, hasn't there, between the self that we show the world and our real self. And that's why, one of the reasons why people crave intimacy and love, relationships, is a chance to return to a state that, if we're lucky, we would have known in childhood, where we can be ourselves without censorship. We can just say what comes into our head. We can be silly, we can be sweet, we can be vulnerable, we can be daft, whatever it is. Most of the time we can't do that. It's really important that we get a chance to do that.
It's really interesting, isn't it? Because like a toddler will think nothing more of chasing after a pigeon.
That's right.
But an adult, you're like, you'd be, people would look at you with such, but you look at a toddler, he goes, right, I'm chasing that.
But it also says things like, what would happen if you plucked all the feathers off a pigeon, or what would happen if you, shaved a chimpanzee or whatever. Lots of thoughts run through their minds, which is why, I think anyone who's had children knows that sometimes they, get annoying after hour. But a period of time spent with a young child is a mind-opening experience because their minds are so free and so open, and it's an invitation. I mean, it's no surprise that artists, thinkers, etc., have often romanticized children as having insight. Someone like the poet William Blake. The childish imagination can see things that otherwise only the poet can see. And I think they're trying to touch on what gets lost as people move towards adulthood, which is there are lots of good things that come with adulthood, but one of the terrifying things, and you can see that as people go through adolescence, is the word normal. Suddenly, it becomes really important to understand what normality is and align yourself with it. And, there are some good reasons for that. Otherwise, the whole world would be, too eccentric. But there's a cost to that pressure to be normal. A lot gets lost. We become boring, hidebound, conventional. We miss stuff. And I think we ache to get back to that. And I think the quality we know is intimacy, is that chance to be a bit weird with someone and discovering that that's okay with them. It's okay, they don't mind. And that's a wonderful feeling.
I really like that. The instead of saying, do you fancy going on a date, do you want to be weird with me?
Do you want to be weird with me?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And there's so much in that, isn't that? You think of like some of the great moments you have with a partner. They have involved utter silliness or really small in-jokes.
That's right.
that nobody else would get, and yet they sort of represent this password into that kind of forbidden land.
Wow. Yeah.
But do you know what I mean? It's really,
Yeah.
it's so that, it's kind of it's the pillow talk. It's the
And
weird.
we've got this idea that if people get on really well and they're really close, they'll be discussing, I don't know, ancient philosophy or macroeconomics or something. The deeper they know each other. But actually, if you put a microphone in a couple that's really getting along well, they'll be talking nonsense.
Yeah.
And really what we're saying is they'll be allowing someone else to know them deeply.
Yes.
And that is an amazing thing.
So, why do you think? What happens then? Why are we so frightened, and yet we yearn so deeply for people to know us?
I mean, look, let's not sugarcoat this. We're quite odd our full reality is quite odd. We want things that are a bit strange sometimes, quite outside the norm. We like people we're not supposed to like. We don't like people that we're meant to like. We do lots of things that we're not quite, dead on message for what a standard human being is. And that's frightening. Partly it's frightening because we don't understand. Sometimes we get unduly worried because we confuse reality with fantasy. Again, let's go back to children. A child will stand up on the kitchen table and go, I'm a pirate and I'm going to kill everyone. And they know, and the adults know, that they're not a pirate and they're not about to kill everyone. But they're allowed to enter that state of mind.
Yes.
As adults, we kind of oddly sometimes censor our imagination. We don't allow ourselves the same freedom. It's obviously a fantasy. It's not a plan for real world action.
Yeah.
And I think a lot gets missed. So to answer your question, we get frightened
Presumably
by
it's
ourselves.
tricky to do that in Somalia.
Yes, lots of settings.
Yeah.
Just applause.
Yeah.